for today. So I'm also going to share a bit of my experiences with you at Ntataise. It was in 1979, in July, when I left Ntataise Primary School and joined Ntataise. I heard about the vacant post of a supervisor from Sister Teki, who was a health worker at that time. I did not hesitate and grab the opportunity because it sounded exciting, though I didn't understand fully when we were discussing with Jane, even during the interview. What excited me most is that it was going to be at Hunters Flay, where I was born and brought up. I thought it was a chance for me to plow back to the community, which has been part of my upbringing. I remember every time when I had to go back to school, they would give me some money as provision. And sometimes this money that they gave me was enough for transport to go to school from Viljoenskroon to Kwakwa, where I was actually doing my teacher training. And at that time, R4.50 was a lot, and that was what we actually was able to assemble from people who were giving me money, and that would relieve us from stress of thinking about the transport. When I started work, I spent 2 weeks with Lydia, the other supervisor who was my mother-in-law, at Hunters Flay Nursery School, observing and taking part. The 4 teacher aides who were working there, they were happy to actually show off what they followed when they followed the daily program. However, it occurred to me months later that they did not fully understand what they were doing. In August, we left for Cape Town by train to attend a training course at Elru. It was exciting about the new job. I was excited really about the new job, the big city. Can I have water? The big city and staying in a hotel for the first time. On the other hand, I was worried about leaving my child for such a long time. The thought of not knowing what was going to happen made me nervous. Though I tried my best to learn and understand, there was not much to enjoy with my mother-in-law watching me all the time like a hawk. The very first day, I found it quite difficult because instead of being shown the program, the trainer started by asking us what would we like to learn. I was wondering because I expected them to be ready with what they were going to teach us. I kept asking myself if they were really prepared for the course. Little did I know that I was actually going to do the same with my teacher aides back home. I was expecting to be given information, not to suck it from us. It was totally different from how I was taught and how I was teaching as a primary school teacher. As time went on, it became better, but I was homesick. I missed my language because the languages which were spoken in Cape Town, it was English, Afrikaans, and Xhosa. I also missed my pap, and I also didn't wait to go back home. What I went through in Cape Town was nothing compared to what I was awaiting us when we go back home. Real work started. We and the children were the only ones excited about what we were doing. Some nursery schools were not yet operating when we came back. We had to first help parents understand what their children will be doing at the nursery school because they were not convinced that the children could learn while playing. We brought nursery school children and teacher aids and toys from Hunters Flay to demonstrate to them, and at least they were happy about that and what they were actually seeing. Teacher aides had to be hired in order to run the nursery schools. It was the community which had to choose because they were the ones who knew their people better. We were actually looking for women who love children and those who the community could trust to look after their children. Most of the women chosen went to school just for a few years, and some did not go to school at all. When all the nursery schools were up and running, introductory courses started. The training materials were written in English, and had to be translated in Sesotho, and this was not easy. Then came the question I was asked a few months back, what would you like to learn from this course? Their answers were to learn to drive, to teach the children A, E, I, O, U, to learn to cook, etc. I'm sure they were also asking themselves the same question I had when I was asked back in Cape Town, because they went quiet for a time and look at each other before they could give the answers that I've just mentioned. It was before lunchtime when one of them bravely stood up and said to me, but Mawani, meaning auntie, you remember when you recruited us, you said it was okay to work in the nursery school, even if you cannot read and write. But by the look of things, it seems you are going to expect us to read and write, which we will not be able to do. I tried to explain, but they were not convinced. The green books that we were using then were put aside. These were written by Karen van der Merwe in Cape Town. They were put aside and we opted to simple games, songs, stories and rhymes they knew and shared these among themselves. And at least they became a bit relaxed. Introductory course and monthly workshops followed later and were reinforced by weekly support visits, which consisted of observations, demonstrations, and discussions. The emphasis on performance was not on performance and not on the qualification, was just on performance, not on the qualification. Courses and workshops well attended, they got certificates of attendance. Those who performed well in nursery schools were elevated to assistant supervisors, like just what Bonnie has alluded to. They helped with toy making, demonstrations of music and story time during training courses, and they were later then sent to Elru for training. The idea of women chosen as nursery school teachers' aid did not sit well with some husbands. Some went to an extent of relocating because of jealousy and also thinking that their wives will be much better than them. Some did not want to hear anything just because they were supposed to pay 50 cents a month for their children in the nursery schools. They did not even bother to know what it was called. They called it that bloody clinic. We never gave up. Sorry. We held evening meetings for parents which were not successful because they came late from work and they still had to prepare meals. Saturday meetings were also a bad choice because they will always come after having a few drinks. It was not easy to control them. However, at the end, they will go home happily waving their artwork ready to show to their children. Jane was attending most of this meeting, the parent meetings that we had, and she was always making an effort to reach out to parents. I remember in one of the meetings, she tried her best with the Africans that she had. She was inviting the parents for the dental care session, which the health worker was going to conduct. Then she said in her Afrikaans, die suster kom saam met julle praat. Sy gaan saam met julle praat hoe om lekker tande te kry. Because that's what she was actually saying every time when she talked to people. And Mr. Anthony, may his soul rest in peace, he would always say to me, Maria, please help her. Alles is lekker by haar. So the other people that we were supposed to be working with was the primary school teachers, whom we expected to say a lot of good things about the children from the nursery school, but instead they were always complaining how naughty and playful and uncontrollable our children were. This did not discourage us because we were big enough at that time to understand that the problem was with them. And now we started inviting them to our workshops, which they happily attended and enjoyed. And on the other hand was the farmers. Though some were liberal, some were not. They were not comfortable having us in their homes and even sharing meals with us. I remember at one of the farms, when we went with Jane to talk to them, one of the white ladies didn't want me to actually have lunch in her house. And then Jane was strong enough to tell her that if Maria is not going to have lunch with us, we'd rather go out of this house with her and then we'll go and eat somewhere. Well, those are some of the achievements, but however, a lot of things changed over the time, and the problems that we had seemed to fade away with time. Because I remember one day we were actually driving out of one of the farms in Viljoenskroon, and then we met a man on a bicycle. He stopped us and asked us if there was a nursery school on that farm, and then we said yes. And then he said to us, I'm looking for employment, and I will be very much happy if I could get an employment where there is a nursery school. And then we thought, this is something that is actually happening with the people. And even with the primary, with the parents, they were now actually sending their children normally to the primary, to the ECD, to the nursery school, as though they were sending their children to the primary school. And they also even hired transport from the township, some of them, to take children to the Hunters Flay, where the nursery school was actually existing. And those are some of my experiences in the early years with Ntataise. And lastly, if this is what we were able to achieve by just following Jane's vision, because we did not understand and not know what we were doing, but we were working very hard. With the information we have now, the expertise from other people and the resources that we are actually at our disposal now, I think we can do more. And I would like to thank you so much, Mayor Jane, because you also contributed to my upbringing. And I can't say a lot because it says itself because of the people who we actually trained or helped to develop. Thank you.